Good evening and welcome to the 7 o'clock news bulletin. I'm Ahmed Makki. We begin with the headlines where His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Crown Prince of Dubai, arrives in the country. The United Nations says that Syrian refugee crisis could have huge consequences for the future of the whole region. New U.S.-led airstrikes targeting the so-called IS militant group are carried out in Iraq and Syria. And Ukraine's president says a military threat from Russia will remain even if a truce with rebels holds. In local news, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah has sent today a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah also sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mubarak Al-Hamid Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable of congratulations. Still in local news, where His Highness the Crown Prince of Dubai and Chairman of the Dubai Executive Council, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, arrived in the country today. His Highness Sheikh Hamdan was received upon arrival by Deputy Minister of the Emiri Diwan Affairs, Sheikh Ali Al-Jarrah Al-Sabah. Moving on to other news, where the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees said that Lebanon and Jordan have seen their populations grow as refugees continue to escape Syria's civil war. Speaking at a meeting of the UN Security Council in New York, Antonio Guterres said that almost 2 million Syrian refugees under the age of 18 risk becoming a lost generation. He also said that Turkey had become the biggest refugee hosting country in the world. He added that this crisis in the making could have huge consequences for the future of the whole region. More than 3.8 million Syrians are believed to have fled their country in the 4 years war since the uprising against President Bashar al-Assad led to a civil war. Elsewhere, the U.S. Department of Defense said that coalition forces carried out airstrikes on buildings for the so-called IS militant group in Iraq. The U.S. Department of Defense said that the strikes were conducted as part of an operation inherent to resolve the operation by American and Western powers to eliminate IS and the threat it poses in Iraq and Syria. The U.S.-led coalition is targeting IS from the sky in Iraq and Syria, supporting Western-backed Syrian rebels, Kurdish fighters, and the Iraqi military on the ground. On Thursday, the coalition carried out 5 airstrikes in northeastern Syria, hitting an area where the IS is believed to hold more than 250 Christians hostage. In another major topic, pro-Palestinian activists clashed with Israeli troops in the West Bank town of Bilin today. Palestinian protesters gathered to mark the 10th anniversary of the weekly protest held at Bilin against the construction of the Israeli separation barrier. As they advanced on the barrier, Israeli troops responded with tear gas. Bilin, which was split in two when the separation barrier was constructed, has become a symbol of Palestinian protest against Israeli policies in the West Bank. In other developments, an Israeli court sentenced 15-year-old Khalid Sheikh for 4 months and a fine, while Israel has recently been targeting children with arrests, apprehensions and detentions, especially in Jerusalem. From Ramallah, Fatma Abdul Karim has more.
An Israeli military court convened and sentenced a 15-year-old Palestinian boy in his 10th grade for 4 months of imprisonment and a fine, in violation of his right to get a fair trial and the international laws regulating the trial of minors. Khalid Sheikh, the 15-year-old, is the most recent victim of Israel's policy in apprehending children under false pretexts, according to their families and lawyers.
تم اعتقاله يوم 25/12 بعد الظهر. تم التحقيق معه الساعة 1:30 ليلا في محطة.
He was arrested on the 25th of last December. He was investigated after midnight in the police station without the presence of his parents or his lawyer. He was pressured by the investigator and forced to say he heard stones, and therefore he was sent to military court.
The Palestinian popular and official groups have condemned subjecting children to arrests and different sorts of detention, long or short term. They say this is a new tactic used by Israeli authorities while it records its lowest by detaining the youngest female prisoner in the world, Malak al-Khatib, released last month. And today, it holds at least 30 children in detention and house arrests, mainly in Jerusalem.
This is a war crime according to the international law. Israeli occupation authorities is practicing on the ground. A policy leads to arrested more children. There is more than 30 small kids in Jerusalem district are now arrested in their homes according to the Israeli illegal law. And I consider this as a war crime.
Israel pulled Khalid al-Sheikh from behind his school desk to behind prison bars, and continues to do so in illegal military courtrooms and in house arrests, banning dozens of children even from playing with their peers. Fatma Abdel Karim, State of Kuwait Television, Ramallah, Palestine.
Continuing with our news bulletin, where Yemen's President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi met with the UN envoy in Aden as the southern city increasingly became the country's de facto political and diplomatic capital instead of the militia-held Sana'a. Saudi Arabia also announced its envoy was resuming his duties in Aden after several Arab and Western nations closed their embassies in Sana'a this month over security fears. Hadi held his first face-to-face talks with UN envoy Jamal bin Umar in Aden after fleeing on Saturday to Aden. Hadi has called for the government to rally in Aden after he escaped house arrest. Bin Umar told reporters after the talks that he hoped Hadi's resumption of duties would help to pull Yemen out of its crisis. In other world news, Ukraine today reported the first deaths in 3 days in the East Ukraine, denting hopes of a ceasefire that will hold, as President Petro Poroshenko said that Russia would pose a military threat even if the truce is solid. Government troops fighting pro-Russian separatists in the east have begun towing artillery away from the front line, a sign that Ukraine's military recognized the ceasefire meant to take effect on February 15 was at last holding. But Kiev's military later announced the deaths of 3 servicemen in the past 24 hours, following 2 full days without fatalities that had raised hopes of a truce holding. Officials said that the Ukrainian army continued to withdraw its weapons today, but the army will remain on high alert in case of a new offensive from the separatists. China defended its activities today in the southern China Sea as being restrained and responsible after a U.S. intelligence chief called its expansion of outposts in the region an aggressive effort to assert sovereignty. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Li said that the country's activities on the shoals and its surrounding waters are legitimate and legal. China says it has historical claims to a huge swath of the South China Sea that overlaps the claims of several neighbors, including Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, and the Philippines, and it objects to what it considers U.S. meddling. The United States, on the other hand, says that it has a national interest in the peaceful resolution of the disputes in the region. The death toll from avalanches and flooding across much of Afghanistan has jumped to more than 200 people, and the number is expected to climb with cold weather and difficult conditions hammering rescue efforts. After days of severe weather across the central and northeastern provinces, the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported 229 people dead in at least 18 of Afghanistan's 34 provinces. It said that hundreds more are left homeless after avalanches destroyed their homes. Many more remained cut off from help as roads were blocked by deep snow from heavy storms early this week. Extreme cold temperatures were expected in many parts of the country in coming days. Officials said that harsh conditions and lack of machinery were hammering efforts to reach people trapped, injured, or dead. The German parliament today voted to extend the financial aid to Greece by another 4 months. The extension approved by creditors last week in exchange for a series of Greek government reforms needs to be ratified by Eurozone members. Germany among the countries that needed to approve the deal in its national parliament. It comes after police and protesters clashed during anti-government demonstrations in Athens on Thursday. They were the first such disturbances since Greece's Syriza party was sworn in as the main government party a month ago, promising to renegotiate the country's debt and end austerity. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Now, before we leave you tonight, here's a quick reminder of the headlines. His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Crown Prince of Dubai, arrives in the country. The United Nations says that Syrian refugee crisis could have huge consequences for the future of the whole region. New US-led airstrikes targeting the so-called IS militant group are carried out in Iraq and Syria. And Ukraine's president says a military threat from Russia will remain even if a truce with rebels holds.